Hi everyone, this is Brad Ward. I'm the Director of Community Philanthropy here at the Council on Foundations. Thanks for joining us. We've got a great group of panelists and presenters that are going to wind us through the intricacies of Giving Days. And I also wanted to let you know that we're fortunate enough to have the illustrious Brian Del Rosario from the legal team joining us in today. That's one of those great benefits you have here at the Council. There's always a lawyer hanging around in the corners and keeping us honest and keeping us straight. But he's here if we've got any questions that meander into legalities. So he's going to be one more perspective and one more voice, so we're glad to have him. Thanks again. This is the Giving Days webinar, whether ramp up or wind down. We're going to be getting perspectives from community foundation leaders on both sides of the Giving Day effort, as well as some insights from the Knight Foundation, which has certainly been one of the backbones and the pillars of engagement around Giving Days, and will be with us, joining us here today as well. We're going to start out with a little bit of housekeeping. If you know your way around this webinar, you can certainly access the help desk on the top of the toolbar in your GoToWebinar navigation panel. At any time, you can ask questions of the presenters. This is utilizing the Q&A icon to type in your question, and that will come to the presenters. I'll be moderating that throughout the session, so feel free to ask those as they come to mind. We will try to address them either during the presentation, or we'll certainly get to those at the very end. If for any reason you need to exit, just find the gray X button at the top. And of course, for our telephone participants, just recognize we'll have you muted, but so you can at any time ask questions through the Q&A. This webinar will be recorded. It will be available on our website within the next 2 weeks. It'll be part of the event page where you found this event to start with and you registered. With that, let's jump right into the agenda here today. Once again, I'll give you some introductions to the folks that have joined us and given up their time and sharing their stories. We'll jump into some findings on the Giving Days report, thanks to the Knight Foundation. And then we'll have some folks who will talk about their strategic value and the alignment that they have found in Giving Days as part of their strategic, planning and as part of their growing process, as well as folks who have had some particular lessons that they've learned and want to share, and for reasons why they've moved on from Giving Days. On the core of this topic, we certainly want to give community foundation leaders some food for thought if they are deliberating whether Giving Days is an important strategy or initiative that they want to undertake, or perhaps you already are in Giving Days and you want to get better perspective of how you can improve or move on from Giving Days if by chance you feel that it's run its course in your community. With that, let's jump right into the presenters. I want to first thank our co-presenter today with the Knight Foundation. Michelle is our Program Associate for Community Foundations at the Knight Foundation, and she'll be working through the playbook and some reports that have been compiled on Giving Days. Our panelists, our next slide on the panelists, these are the fine folks that are going to give their personal perspectives and give you some more insights to why they are either ramping up and doubling down their efforts on Giving Days, or why they have chosen to move on from Giving Days and wind it down those efforts. Those panelists are Lori. Lori comes from the Bluegrass Community Foundation, and Janelle Kaplan from the Miami Foundation. They'll be telling us why they're ramping up efforts. And our panelists on discussing why they're winding down is Kelly Uranker from the Pittsburgh Foundation and Sarah Davison from the Silicon Valley Community Foundation. So with that, I'm going to jump right in to giving Michelle the stage and let her give us some background and information on the report.
Great, thank you, Brad. As you said, my name is Michelle Huttenhoff. I'm with Knight Foundation, and I work in our Community and National Initiatives Department. And I'm really excited to be here and to present on our experience with Giving Days. I actually come from a community foundation where I worked with Janelle on the first Giving Day back in 2012 at the Miami Foundation. So it's been really interesting to see the progression of where these have gone. So Knight Foundation, we're really interested and have deep partnerships with community foundations from across the country. And so we have donor advised funds in 26 community foundations. And in 18, we work directly with them to execute our strategic grant making. And so we're always looking for new ways to investigate how community foundations can better engage with residents in their region, increase local philanthropy, and really elevate their role and brand in the regions in which they serve. We see community foundations as civic engagement hubs and playing a key role in meeting information needs. And so back in 2012, a group of staff here at Knight Foundation really wanted to kind of pilot new ways that community foundations can move into a more strategic role. And so they piloted this concept called a giving day. And it was wildly successful. And so what we did was we went into a very large initiative and invested in a 3-year period for community foundations across the country to test this idea. And there were a lot of learnings along the way. We saw collectively around $116 million raised, over 350,000 donors participating, and including 20,000 nonprofit organizations that registered to participate in these events. And so, of course, now looking back over the past 3 years, we've found a lot of different trends unique to each region, but then 3 that we've seen kind of across the field. And so in our final report, which is on our website, and we've been able to do a few different blog posts that I encourage you to go and read that synthesize these learnings, we saw 3 key trends. One, that Giving Days helped grow and democratize philanthropy. It really showed that anybody could get involved. You didn't need to have millions of dollars to make a lasting impact in your community. We saw so many folks give for the first time and give gifts really under $50 and felt such a great, feeling of giving back to the community in which they reside in. 2, we saw that it raised the visibility and credibility of community foundations. Many of the donors and people who participated, both financially and the nonprofits, it was their first point of entry into the community foundation was through a Give Day. And so that's really interesting. And we've seen from a lot of community foundations prior to Give Day that while they were pillars in their community, they were really only engaging with certain individuals. Really now community foundations are more widely recognized, and people see them as pillars in the community that they can go to learn from and to get assistance in throughout the year, which has been really great to see. And third, we saw that these events help strengthen the capacity of the foundation in terms of their online fundraising presence and their social media strategies. And so a key component of this is the digitalization of community foundations moving forward. And so that internal capacity has led to them being able to move more strategically in other programmatic areas other than just Giving Days. So where are we at right now? I think with all foundations, private or nonprofit, it's really important to kind of take time to pause and reflect on initiatives that have been successful or may not have and decide, are we going to continue to do this? Are we going to iterate and focus it in a different way? Or is it time to maybe say we're not going to do a Giving Day anymore, but we're going to use this added capacity and learning in a different way to engage with residents and increase our donor base? And so at Knight Foundation right now, we're kind of doing the same thing. We're looking at the field, we're seeing the trends that are occurring in the foundation landscape, and we're actively designing new programs that can help invest in community foundations to grow their awareness and to better engage with residents and hopefully, therefore, establish new fund holders at their foundation. We've seen some really interesting things with Giving Days in the markets in which we work where if they have decided to continue, they've either integrated it more fully into their programmatic work, or they're using it to focus on a niche issue area or tapping into a specific demographic they want to increase their relationship with. And so we've seen Giving Days that focus on just the arts community, or they want to increase millennial giving, and so they're going to focus on that. And so I think it's just really interesting to see now 3 years later where the field has been moving in this space. And I look forward to hearing to the different case studies throughout this webinar.
Thanks, Michelle. And just a reminder, folks, you heard her reference the Giving Day Playbook, and givingdayplaybook.org is where you can find pretty comprehensive resources around the Giving Day initiative that Knight Foundation has given to the field. It supports planning, it supports outreach, the day of logistics. You can get some pretty impressive peer learning samples on there as well as some follow-up and assessment tools. And so again, we'll reference that later in the presentation, but I just wanted to mention for all of you who are in that process of contemplating this strategy or you're still working through a Giving Days campaign and want to continue to hone it, the givingdayplaybook.org is certainly a phenomenal resource for you. Michelle, thank you. I think it was important that you talked about how if they continue to do Giving Days, they're integrating it in very strategic ways to tie it specifically to development or programmatic needs, and I think we're going to hear a little bit about that as we move into Janelle and Lori, but certainly that is something that is been very relevant for many community foundations to tie it to millennial giving or to a specific need such as the arts, as you referenced. So I appreciate that. Michelle, just a reminder for our attendees, if you had questions about anything that you heard Michelle reference, you can do the Q&A and I'll be glad to make sure we get that answered. With that, we're going to move on to getting some more case studies, getting a bit more specifics from those who have lived this and those who work through the logistical challenges as well as the opportunities that come with Giving Days. And so at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Janelle and Lori.
Great. Well, thank you so much for the opportunity to share with you today. Special thanks to the Council on Foundations for your support and to the Knight Foundation for being a tremendous partner throughout our experience with Giving Days. So Lori and I are both here in sunny Miami, and so this is a unique opportunity to be speaking jointly with Lori in the same place on the webinar.
That's right. I actually flew in from not so sunny Kentucky just about an hour ago, and get this unique opportunity to actually be in Miami sitting next to Janelle to present this. So this is pretty fun for both of us to do this. But to talk about ramping up Giving Days and why they're so important to both of our foundations is actually pretty easy for both of us because we've been doing this for about the same amount of time, which is kind of unique. And although both of our giving events are very, very different, we have a lot of things that are different about them. However, we found in discussion that a lot of things were going on that were kind of similar, which was sort of fun. So the first thing we can probably talk about is a little bit about why they are in alignment with our foundation goals. And I'll let Janelle go first, and then I'll talk about that.
Great. So the Miami Foundation, we launched our first Giving Day in 2012, and really it was something that came together very quickly. We ultimately knew that we had a very great brand. We actually had changed the name of the foundation in 2010, and we were going through a process where we were evaluating all the different channels in which we communicated with our fund holders and really the community. And on social media, we had no presence. With the rebranding, we knew that it would be something we needed to work on, but the Giving Day really allowed us to be able to speak about what we did 364 days of the year, the other days of the year, but at the same time provide an opportunity for the community to come together. So definitely, our goal is to build a greater Miami. There's only so much that we can do with our current grant-making program. So we have our field of interest funds that are supporting specific areas of interest, and we also have a small pool of unrestricted funds. But we found that the Giving Day allowed us to reach a larger population of nonprofits that we think felt neglected for over a period of time. So our Giving Day is one county. It's for 24 hours, and as long as you're a 501c3 organization or a project-based fund at the Miami Foundation, you can participate. We allow the ability for donor-advised fund holders to participate. We've seen significant increase in their participation over the years. Just this past year in November, we had over $1 million donated. So of our $9.1 million that was raised on Give Miami Day, $1 million was provided by our existing fund holders at the foundation. I'll go more into later about the different incentives that we have for our particular day, but we did announce a new opportunity this year that we felt drive additional momentum to the day.
Right. Cool. And ours has been around, we just finished up and wrapped up our 6th year. Ours came into play because we had a partnership with a local publishing company called Smiley P. Publishing that did sort of local neighborhood papers. They came to us with an idea that they had gotten out of Portland and wanted to partner with us on a giving event of some sort. Ours is not a day. Ours is, believe it or not, it has been a 6-week giving initiative. It was 5 weeks last year, and ours spans about 9 counties, and we have about 120 nonprofits. And through that, and that's changed. It started out with 59 nonprofits in 1 county in 2011, and then it's morphed into, over the years, we added more counties because we have affiliate funds in different counties, and we wanted to get their nonprofits involved. And really it was to make the Bluegrass the most charitable resource and place it could possibly be. And we wanted to encourage giving across the entire region, and that is where that came from. And we wanted to make charitable giving fun, rewarding, and accessible to as many people as possible. And this seemed like a great vehicle. There was not only a print component, which was going out via the local publishing company, and at one point it was also being inserted into our local paper. We did change that this year. The reason being was our local paper actually got switched around, and it's now not being published out of, believe it or not, locally. It's being published out of somewhere else. And so we found that it wasn't as robust as it was before, so we stuck with our local publishing company, utilizing them, and then also it's free, so we can put it in coffee shops. We had our nonprofits take it and provide it in their communities, and that worked out really well for us. And then, of course, we have a very robust social media campaign. But we also do the same thing with our donors. We have donor advised funds can give through us with that. We also have credit card, debit cards, PayPal is also what we use to get things going. And really, we just want investing together for our community is our main thing. And we do not use donor incentives. We actually just we focus on endowment prizes for our nonprofits, so we'll talk about that later as well.
Great. So we wanted to also talk a little bit about how our Giving Day aligns with the Foundation's overall strategy. And in that, we decided that ultimately, at the end of the day, the Miami Foundation has a focus on increasing civic engagement in our community. In 2010, a report was released by the National Conference of Citizenship that compared Miami to Minneapolis, St. Paul. And unfortunately, the Miami area, the greater Miami area, was labeled as the least civically engaged community. And so that was definitely a very hard pill to swallow. And it was something that really just drove our efforts since then. So we've been happy to see philanthropic giving increase from 2014 to 2016. And we really feel that the Miami Foundation and the Giving Day has allowed for this opportunity to really reach areas in the community that we've never had the exposure that we previously did. At the same time, too, our donor base has really diversified. I'll share a little bit later on how we marketed specific areas in the community, but we did develop a strategy this year to engage communities that we defined as having the capacity to possibly give more, but they haven't, and areas that we feel nonprofit organizations aren't serving in those particular areas, and how do we reach those areas through a more specific marketing campaign. But overall, our initiative is to really expand the impact for nonprofits and provide them with an opportunity to raise additional funding outside of a competitive grant-making opportunity that they would have with the Miami Foundation.
Yeah, and our biggest strategic goal overall was we changed ours during the course of time. One was to attract young donors. That's how it all began, was we were finding that we didn't have young donors, and the best way to engage them, of course, was through online giving and social media. We also found that our nonprofits lacked in a social media presence. So that's really what the genesis of it all was. But in the long run, over the course of time, we found that this training opportunity that the challenge provided for them, our nonprofits got much more, they were just so much better on social media. We still provide tons of training on that. I'll talk about it later. But in the long run now, our strategic goal was really on endowment building and keeping those nonprofits buzzing and active in our community in perpetuity. So now we're very much aligned with endowment building for our nonprofits, endowment building training, how to keep those endowments going. So we really align everything with the challenge with that, and that's a huge part of what we're doing. Not only training our donors on what endowments are, but also our nonprofits on how they can utilize them and expanding that as well. So that's what we've been working on the most.
Lori and Janelle, just real quick, I'm going to jump in and ask you a good question that has come up from the crowd. Could you, and I'll ask the same questions later for Kelly and Sarah, but could you tell us how many staff members at each of your foundations are on the Giving Days team?
Sure. At Bluegrass Community Foundation, while I would say we have a staff of 11, and while there are people that contribute to the Giving Day needs, it's just me. So I am a one-woman Good Giving Challenge whirlwind.
Wow. So we have 22 full-time employees here at the Miami Foundation, and we have 3 individuals that are on the core Give Miami Day team. So we definitely pull in additional individuals as we get closer to Give Miami Day, but the core team is a development, a programs position, as well as our communications team. And then later on, we bring in our finance team and our administrative team as the date gets closer. But then on Give Miami Day, it's our complete staff that is in one room for 24 hours answering phone calls.
And so that was going to be my next question. For you, Lori, how much time, and I know that's very difficult to say, but just give us some sense of how many months out of the year that you are truly focused on Giving Days as a priority, or where does it really consume your time? And then specifically, you might talk about the nonprofit outreach that I know you do in connection to this.
Well, so over the course, I've been at the foundation for just under 2 years, and when I started, it was considered a 7th month part of my job, and with that I was also wearing the hat of being our social media manager overall, and our media liaison. So that was how it was sort of looked at as part of my job. Now it's considered year-long. However, I still do, as most people who work in community foundations know, I wear multiple hats no matter what, depending on what initiatives are going on. But I still do our social media management. I'm the Good Giving Challenge manager, social media manager, and I do our media liaison work as well. So while it is the primary focus of my job, I can say that there is a great deal of time that I still spend doing lots of other things. I also do a ton of nonprofit outreach during the course of the challenge. I run a lot of different trainings and boot camps, everything from board engagement, donor engagement, social media trainings, and I put those all together over the course of this year. I have a really robust package that I wanted to get out to our nonprofits. One of the things that we focused on heavily this year was training to see how much of a difference it would make for them. And we did sort of a boot camp type of work. So that's what I do.
So this is going to raise another question that has come from the audience, and I'm going to go ahead and sneak this in. And Michelle, I might ask you to be on deck as well for this, but particularly Lori and Janelle, do you take into consideration nonprofit development capacity when you're weighing whether or not these Giving Days are worth it? And specifically what the attendee was commenting on is that they have found it to be very beneficial for the smaller organizations because they learn about how to manage fundraising and communications efforts. But what's your experience? Would you agree, disagree? Where does nonprofit development capacity fit into the success of those participating?
So what we've heard from especially the smaller nonprofits is that this has forced them to develop strategies, especially with regard to fundraising and their social media goals, because they, as smaller nonprofits, they can only focus on what's right in front of them. And with Give Miami Day, we announced the date. This year we announced the date forever. So it will always, Give Miami Day will always take place the Thursday before Thanksgiving. And by announcing this date in advance, they're able to more effectively plan for what their goals are going to be for the next year, not only for number of donors, but just outreach. How are they going to communicate this opportunity effectively, whether it's going to be through social media or sending mailings or, having an event that would conclude in an ask that would then be given on Give Miami Day. So we've heard from the smaller nonprofits, they definitely feel supported. But then there's always some other nonprofits that feel like they're a small fish and a very large pool of opportunities. So this past Give Miami Day, we had 664 nonprofits participate. But what we've done is we've structured our trainings this past year. We had more trainings than ever. We had 10. We also allowed for office hours where our office was open pretty much for 4 to 5 hours on 2 different days where nonprofits could come in and speak one-on-one with a development team member or a programs team member or a communications team member, so they could kind of figure out what they've been, share with us their ideas, and we could speak through those ideas. And then also we found that by structuring our trainings and being as specific as possible with what the content was going to be at each of these trainings, we felt that the nonprofits didn't feel overwhelmed. They could look at our list of trainings and say, you know what, I've participated 3 or 4 times already. I don't think I need to go to the back to basics type of training. So we feel like the nonprofits were armed with enough information to, best effectively communicate their goal for the Giving Day. We also found that this is really the only initiative in which they can ask for general operating. So how our Giving Day is structured is they can communicate to their donors that they're going to use the dollars for a specific program, but we encourage them to really leave it open-ended because they're really never going to have this opportunity to get these dollars and ultimately use them for whatever they, as an organization, need those dollars for. So we've seen success for smaller nonprofits as well as larger nonprofits to be able to allocate their dollars more effectively at the end of the day.
Yeah, I would agree, and there's so much that she said that I would agree with. The way that I sort of looked at it all was, I come from also being involved in nonprofit myself as in an arts nonprofit, and one of the things I really wanted to focus on was that not all nonprofits fit into the same box. So I really wanted them to take advantage of what they needed. So the tiny nonprofit, I can give an example. We have a tiny little nonprofit in a tiny little county who has no experience. They're a farm that helps disabled adults get some work skills. The idea behind them was they had never done anything like this, and for them to have some opportunity for training and things like that in any kind of way was incredibly, of course, valuable to them. And so, of course, we have a couple of those every year, and then we have everything in between. We have an extremely advanced, large nonprofit that may not need as much. So the idea is that we always have our training aligned with the concepts that anyone can sort of cherry pick what they might really need and what would be the most useful for them. So that's my whole concept behind it, and really wanting to make it as open and available to the nonprofits and what they find the most useful.
All right, we're about halfway through, so Lori, Janelle, wanted to give you a chance to give any concluding thoughts, particularly to what you've been doing to ramp up your activities before we shift over to Kelly and Sarah.
So it's important to note that our Giving Day has evolved so much. So each year we make a commitment that we want to introduce, 1 or 2 new enhancements, whether that's to the donor experience on the site on Give Miami Day, or just an overall new perk. So this past year we created what's called match minutes, and so we had a corporate sponsor provide 2 minutes, $7,500 each minute, and gifts would be matched 1 for 1 up to $100, and it was wildly successful. Our first minute was at 7:10 and generated approximately $26,000 in 1 minute. That match minute was over in 8 seconds, and then the second minute, which was at 3:05, was gone in 2 seconds, and that minute had secured $86,000. And so it was wonderful to see the community come out and really try to focus their gifts on those particular minutes. And so we heard from the nonprofits that was exciting, that was fun. We have changed our prizes slightly over the years to really try to help the smaller nonprofits win. We'll continue to try to create new opportunities for the smaller and medium nonprofits so that they can feel like they're getting the most out of this opportunity. One of the challenges that I just wanted to mention was with each Giving Day, we're seeing gifts come from areas outside of the state of Florida. So we are now registering to solicit in every single state that has a requirement. So I would definitely recommend that you take a look at what your data is at the end of every event and make sure that you're in compliance. In our particular state, it's the Department of Agriculture, but just make sure that you're doing the right thing. That you would hate to get a fine from any of these states. And lastly, we understand that Giving Days don't fit every community, but we have seen that it has been able to create such a unique brand for the Miami Foundation. We're celebrating our 50th anniversary this year, and we're interviewing some fund holders that have been working with the foundation for about 50 years. And each and every one of those individuals that we're featuring for our event this Friday has mentioned that the Giving Day has been such a crucial part of their giving over the years, and they feel like the nonprofit organizations finally feel supported, not only with our grant making, but as well as finding opportunities to really diversify their own donor bases.
And I'll go really quickly. I'll just say that for us, over the past 6 years, the biggest thing is that all of our nonprofits were a bit siloed, even if they were in some sort of way working together. But even more so, the nonprofits, the best thing about it is as we gather more nonprofits involved in the challenge, it really does not only create a community among the nonprofits, but not only is it the most public-facing thing we do as a community foundation, it's really part of our core identity, and it is something that everybody, if they don't even know who we are as a community foundation, they certainly know what the challenge is, which is sort of fun, and we continue to grow it in different ways. And our idea is to constantly find creative ways to make it interesting not only for our donors, but for our nonprofits, and to find ways for them to, so I'll have a feedback session about our giving event on February 7th with my nonprofits. I take that feedback very seriously, and then we'll go back and make those changes. A lot of them, the suggestions. So that I take very seriously. I always want to make it better. That's what I'm always striving to do.
Thanks to both of you. A quick question for Michelle. In the playbook on the givingdaysplaybook.org, does it include specific examples of games and incentives that are being offered with these various case studies that you've shown?
There aren't specific examples. I would also reference the Facebook page that we have, because there you're going to see more sharing of specific examples of incentives and prizes that folks have used, but not in the playbook.
Okay, all right, thank you. So Facebook could be a good one, and then obviously all of our presenters and participants today have opened themselves up for follow-up inquiries. For those of you who have particular questions about the specifics involving their various incentives, what they're offering, as well as perhaps even the scale of dollars being raised, we will be touching on that in a bit. And then, so I think we'll get to that. We have other great questions that are being asked, so thanks for asking your questions. Keep them coming, and we'll get those worked in. At this juncture, I'm going to switch over to Sarah Davison from the Silicon Valley Community Foundation, along with Kelly Ranker from Pittsburgh Foundation, and I'm going to let these two give you a little bit of understanding about why they have chosen to wind down their activities with Giving Days. And in particular, Kelly and Sarah, I'm sure you'll cover it, but one of the questions that our attendees have asked is regarding the fatigue that you might see in the community, how you address that concern, and whether or not that was part of the logic behind your moving on from Giving Days. So certainly at any particular point you can address that. I'll keep that on the docket. But Sarah, Kelly, take it away.
Thanks, Brad. This is Kelly Uranker. I direct the Center for Philanthropy at the Pittsburgh Foundation. And what we're going to do today is I'm basically going to give you the arc of our journey from where we started and where we ended and lessons learned. And then my partner, Sarah Davidson, will give you the Silicon Valley arc as well. So we actually started in 2009, 8 years ago, and our motivation for hosting a match event was coming out of the economic downturn in 2008, as you all remember. We saw that our nonprofits were being pretty hard hit and their giving was down. Now, we had 3 goals initially with these match days. We come from a community that is very foundation heavy and very private foundation heavy. And our nonprofits field was increasingly becoming reliant on foundation money, and their individual giving had gone down several years prior to the economic downturn, and then they were hit. So our goal was to provide an incentive for an increase in individual giving through new gifts, existing gifts, and an incentive for people who used to give to come back and give again. We also were aware of the technology trends out there and how more and more nonprofits were having to apply for grants and grant competitions online and the use of social media. So we wanted to give a vehicle and some training around how you would gain new funds and gifts through using technology and social media. And lastly, and frankly, as my prior panelists have mentioned, marketing. We are a 75-year-old organization that is fairly well known in our community. However, we did have a new CEO. We were doing things in a new way, and we really wanted not to be known as, your grandfather's foundation anymore. We wanted to be out there in front of the trends. So here we are 8 years later, and our model has certainly changed and ramped down. But at the beginning, what we would host was a giving day for all nonprofits that serviced our area. We are fortunate enough to have unrestricted funds, so we would provide a $750,000 unrestricted pool that was prorated, that everyone had access to. We host, as my former panelist said, we would host intense social media, stewardship, fundraising, technology, basics, and intermediate level workshops with our staff. And for our staff at the time, we had one person who 60% of their time was worked on the day of giving. We brought in interns and fellows as well. And then, of course, as we ramped up, we brought in people from communications and all of the other departments to be on board for our 24-hour day. As we went along, we increased and were fairly successful. We had wonderful amounts raised. We had wonderful feedback from the community. We would add additional days on in a given year, not sponsored, with the match pool not sponsored by the Pittsburgh Foundation. We had an ARC day for a couple of years running. We actually, about halfway through, hit our peak, and we also surveyed both our nonprofit partners and the public extensively every year about the effectiveness and how they felt about these giving days. And we got 2 very different responses. The nonprofits, regardless of whether they were small, medium, and large, said, of course, they loved the giving days and it was worth the time. However, the public, while very supportive of the overall concept, were we're getting pretty fair percentages about the diminishing return on the percentage that people were getting. So at its peak, every nonprofit for every amount raised got about 22 cents on the dollar. But every year we had more and more nonprofits joining us, and the match pool stayed at the same level. So it diminished slightly, and the public's very smart and picked up on that. So the overall feeling was great, but we were thinking about changing our model. And several things also happened. In 2008, there were not many technology companies out there marketing directly to the nonprofit saying that we can provide online technology for you to raise money. Today, there are several, and the nonprofits are much more savvy. So we started looking at how we could wind down. We felt that pretty much at the 5-year point, we had accomplished equipping the field capacity-wise, and it was time for them to get out on their own. So we shifted to a model where we would host a critical needs alert every year that was mission-focused and topic-specific. We had done them in the past on shelter or food insecurity. We'll be doing one on the safety net this spring. And that is, the pool is funded by the Foundation's unrestricted fund, and it's a smaller pool of nonprofits that are affected by these issues, and that would go along with our branding. we also changed our overall model and started preparing the field that these days of giving would not last forever. Last year, we piloted a model where the nonprofits raised their own match pools. And we provided prize money, which we had not done in the prior 7 years. We were going to test it out, see that our field was prepared and that they could go out on their own. And I'm glad to say that last year they did, in fact, do that, and they raised about $2.5 million in match money on their own, which far exceeded our $750 in prorated money. So with enough preparation, they could do it, and we could provide the vehicle, or they could find vehicles for themselves. And in fact, what we're hearing from our surveys more and more is that they are finding vehicles for themselves where they would like to have days or events where they can choose the timing along with their own fundraising plan. So our reasons for ramping down are we feel that it's time, it's the perfect storm of the technologies out there. We've equipped the field. We have in-house resources for capacity building for smaller to mid-sized nonprofits. If they want to participate, we'll equip them for it, but we don't necessarily need to be the host of the event anymore. With that, I would stop for questions. If anyone has any questions at this time, or if Sarah would like to take up on Silicon Valley's ARC.
Thank you, Kelly, and thanks to the Council of Foundations for having us be a part of the conversation today. Silicon Valley Community Foundation first embarked on our Giving Day, Silicon Valley Gives, or as we call it in shorthand, SV Gives, in 2014. When the Community Foundation decided to embark on this, we really saw it as an opportunity to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the founding of the first community foundation in the country. We will admit that when we went into it, we really, there were a lot of lessons to learn to even get into it. We really appreciated the support of Knight in getting into it, and really only thought it would be a one-time, one-year event. And we were overwhelmed with the success of the first year. We raised close to $8 million with close to 15,000 individuals giving. And the feedback and enthusiasm was strong enough that we felt we needed to commit to another 2 years. We really saw the work that went into putting it to 1 year. If we were going to do it again, we wanted to commit for 2 years. And years 2 and 3 saw about the same levels of success in terms of dollars raised. Over the 3 years total, we raised roughly $24 million. And between years 2 and 3, we actually expanded to include 4 counties, where the first 2 years we just worked with 3 counties. We expanded into San Francisco, the 4th county. So even further touching the number of nonprofits that were participating. Some of the value or rationale for really, expanding and going into it a little further, to some extent have already been echoed by my colleagues that have spoken already. We definitely saw an opportunity to touch more nonprofits than we are able to normally support through our endowment giving and our unrestricted giving. Because there are a limited number of dollars, we can't support everyone, and this was an opportunity to provide support to whichever nonprofit within the region that wanted to participate. We also saw an opportunity to build capacity, as has been echoed over and over. We, like many other folks, provided a lot of in-depth trainings, both in person and online, and the idea of really trying to get some nonprofits who maybe hadn't dipped their toe into online giving to really sort of go there and to have us support them and provide some resources to kind of help them along the way and help them to figure out how they talk to their donors about that. And we also saw an opportunity to broaden outreach. We were, especially moving and expanding into San Francisco, had an opportunity to get exposure to folks maybe we hadn't touched before, and really, introduce ourselves in a new way. In terms of lessons learned, I feel we also made adjustments from years 1 to 2 to 3. I actually had the honor of serving on our program team all 3 years and saw the evolution of how we tried to pick up the efficiencies in the way we were doing things, but also in the way we structured our gifts. I think Janelle mentioned that, they had sort of shifted the way they thought about how gifts were structured, and we definitely had some lessons out of year 1 that we adjusted in terms of how some of the sort of broader prizes or matches were available to larger groups. And so we had a chance to really listen to feedback from both donors and nonprofits and try to kind of adjust how we were doing things along the way. In terms of the winding down question, SBCF has said we are taking a pause. You know, we did it for the 3 years, and I think some of the rationale for needing to take that pause can sort of be echoed in some of the things Kelly's already mentioned. There was some growing frustration amongst both donors and nonprofits around fees that were attached with giving online and sort of how that might be potentially cutting into giving they would have otherwise gotten from donors on other days. I think also the concern around the return on their investment, the ramp up and sort of getting that social media and getting the word out can take a lot of time on the nonprofit's part and a lot of energy, and it might be cutting into other fundraising efforts they were really focused on. And finally, we also felt that we were hearing that kind of donor fatigue that has already been mentioned before in terms of some donors receiving upwards of, you know, many emails from organizations they do support, but all leading up to that day. And that there was sort of a, you know, maybe a question of, you know, how much can we kind of hold all in one day. And so to be responsive to the community, we took that opportunity to say we're going to step back for 2017, reevaluate and rethink for how we can kind of make this more effective and going forward. But for right now, we're taking a pause and not just continuing to sort of churn in something where we haven't heard, where we've heard some concerns as to how it was sort of going over the course of the 3 years.
Sarah, this is Brad. I'm going to ask you a quick question. At what point did you actually notify, when you started to determine that you were going to be winding down, at what point did you notify the nonprofits that was going to be, the pause was coming? When did that take place?
So our Giving Day, the 3 years that we did do it, was always the first Tuesday of May. And the decision to take pause was not taken lightly. It was something that involved a lot of input from the program staff that had been working on it, and, you know, decisions that were mulled over by our leadership, but also required full clearance from our board. So again, a lot of people in that sort of decision making. The announcement to take the pause for 2017 was made the first week of July of 2016, so roughly 10 months before it would have happened in 2017. So given the timing with our board, that's probably about the quickest we could have turned that decision around, but definitely we tried to be conscientious and giving folks a bit of a runway in terms of letting them know that it would be a pause. And on the flip of that, I would say, I would say a lesson we definitely learned from years 1 to 2 was giving people more notice. That first year, I think we announced roughly 7 months before the first Giving Day. And so when we went into year 2, we definitely wanted to give folks more notice. And so on the flip of that, when we decided we were going to make a pause, we similarly wanted to give folks as much sort of heads up as we could.
Lori, and the same question for Kelly, but Lori, same question for you that we asked the other folks. How many staff members did you have from your foundation participating on the Giving Day team?
This is Sarah. So Silicon Valley Community Foundation on a whole has over 130 staff. And it's the main project staff varied a little bit year from year, but I would say it was between 12 to 16 staff that were on that main program team. Mind you, this was, you know, another project, as has been mentioned. It wasn't necessarily anyone's sole job, but it was a cross-organizational effort from our marketing team, development team. I worked within our community impact team on the endowment side, our donor team, our corporate team, so it was really an all hands on deck. The past 2 years, we did have 2 staff members from development who were really the lead, and I would say it took upwards of 50% of their time for a good, I'd say 6 to 8 months of the year. It was definitely sort of forefront on their plate. I actually recently looked at
we have a timekeeping system that we use for workforce development. And I spent close to 150 hours just in 2016 in my own work. And I will say that I was just a tiny small piece of that project team. So definitely kind of, echoing some of the previous comments around, it being a significant lift in time and effort for the hosting organization, but as well as the nonprofit.
So thank you, Sarah. You gave us some context there. Obviously, Silicon Valley is a very large community foundation. You serve a pretty large population. Kelly, could you give us a sense of your staff involvement, maybe the overall size of your community foundation, so that there's some context?
Sure, absolutely. So we're a staff of 50. And specifically to the Giving Day, there is a person who is full-time, and about 60% of her time for the entire year is taken up on Match Day critical needs alert activities. In addition, she has use of a fellow, part-time fellow for nonprofit management and communication. I would say, though, the overall team that works on this is about 6 people. And in addition to, let's say, a monthly meeting every month, they, in the 3 months before the day, which is in May, they are in weekly meetings and probably devoting a good half day to a week to Giving Day activities.
So we're going a little bit smaller here. So Lori, refresh us again the number. Obviously, you were a one-person show for Giving Days, but you have how many folks on staff at Bluegrass?
Sorry, did you say that again?
Yeah, how many folks do you have on staff at Bluegrass? We know that you ran Giving Days on your own there, but how many folks on staff?
11.
11 at Bluegrass, and so for the audience who's been asking the question, so you're kind of getting the scale and the scope and the size of the different organizations in Miami. Janelle, can you refresh our memory of how many staff?
22.
Okay, and how many folks do you have dedicated to Giving Days?
3 on the core team.
Great. All right. So gives you a little bit of scale, gives you a little bit of scope. This is a question for any of you to answer, and I'm actually going to start with Michelle. Michelle, what does the research tell us as far as whether or not nonprofits actually raise more money by participating in Giving Days, or do they see other benefits at their organization because of the Giving Days process?
I think we saw in the last couple years an increase in dollars raised by foundations, but I think what we saw more is that they're just receiving their typical annual gifts, but just on that single day. So there are some folks that went through the platform and were connected to issue area organizations that they were not connected with prior, but there wasn't a significant increase in their annual receipts, just gifts.
Brad, this is Janelle. So we just got the results from our survey that was conducted at the end of our Giving Day in November, and based on that, so 38% of donors participated for the first time this past year, and 33% of donors gave to nonprofits that they were aware of but never financially supported in the past. And then 11% of donors gave to nonprofits that they discovered actually on the day of. So we have a really robust search system, so they're able to look at not only by category, but a variety of different filters that they can learn more about specific nonprofits. So we definitely have seen that nonprofits are receiving donations from new donors each and every year.
Yeah, and we know that is, I don't have the results from this year yet from our survey, but I do know that from last year that was also accurate as well. We have a lot of, especially our nonprofits, gathering a lot of new donors, especially in our unique donor category, having a great deal of build on that.
So this is Kelly. So I would say from our surveys, what we've found in a given year is It almost divides into thirds. About 33% of the money raised is from new donors, 33% is from people who have been lapsed, and we define lapsed as having not given a gift in 2 years, and the other 33% are continuing donors. But the 33% in that latter category, upon further investigation, we discovered that a lot of the existing donors and the annual donors have been shifting their annual gifts to the match day to get a little bit more foundation money, which is perfectly fine, but that was an emerging trend.
Michelle, curiosity also strikes on the side. So obviously, you know, Bluegrass Community Foundation with a staff of 11 is this, you know, the smaller community foundation that we have on this particular call. But just how small of staff are you seeing community foundations who are capable of administering a giving day? Does the research tell us that?
I mean, I would say overall, and probably Michelle could give us an insight here, I would say overall the staff are pretty lean, right? I mean, even in the larger giving days, you just heard the example from Miami, we have one person kind of running the show throughout the year and 3 dedicated during the more intensive time. So I don't know if you... Yeah, I think a majority of the ones in our network do not have a dedicated staff member year-round focusing only on a giving day. And I would say most of the teams are, you know, 1 to 3 individuals working on it. Obviously, their time on the initiative increases around their individual day, but I would say most are teams of 1 to 3.
And what about the you know, given that 65% of our community foundations, 65–70% of the 780 community foundations out there, they tend to have staff of 5 to 6 or less full-time employees. Any knowledge about what are you seeing in those size community foundations? Are they able to handle a giving days, or any knowledge from the research on that?
I mean, I think we're seeing that they are. I mean, as the examples presented, the ones that are more successful in terms of, you know, not having too much fatigue with internal capacity are those that have found ways to integrate a give day into their general programmatic work. So, for instance, when Janelle and Lori were talking about the outreach to the nonprofits, it's not adding capacity or training specifically for just giving days, but just generally for their organization that is going to therefore assist their programs, but then also help them in other community foundation initiatives as well.
And Michelle, while I have you, can you repeat the information about the Facebook page?
Sure. So we have a Giving Day Facebook page that's very active. It's been around for several years, so you can go back and see a lot of great information. But it's a way to engage with one another in the field and pose questions and learn from best practices around specific examples of what folks are doing in their individual markets.
Thank you. And for the rest of you on the call, I just did get a message from Central Carolina Community Foundation. They have self-identified that they are one of those smaller community foundations who feel that they're having success. I know there are many others out there, so certainly you can see on your screen now, if you're participating on the Philanthropy Exchange, you know, through the Council on Foundations, you can dialogue with others and post those types of questions and get information. As well, I'm listing here some of the resources that are always available to you, reminding you about the Giving Days playbook and the report that we've referenced. Unfortunately, we have run out of time. We did not get to Brian, who wanted to touch on the charitable solicitation across state lines. Brian, you want to just give a quick 30-second reminder that?
Yeah, sure. So what I'm talking about is regarding the Charleston Principles, which was drafted by NASCO, the National Association of State Charities Officials. Now that applies every time a charity solicits outside its incorporated state. But there are some exceptions to that. So if the charity, if your foundation specifically targets those within an outside state, or you receive contributions from a state on a repeated and ongoing basis or a substantial basis through the website, then the Charleston Principles would apply, and you'd have to register in those states. However, there is a threshold limit to those states, and you'll have to check on that. And I believe it's about $25,000. And the good thing about this, though, is it's a look-back provision. So, for example, if you have your giving day and you're not, let's say you are in Florida and an outside state, let's say Georgia, you get some cash from Georgia. If it doesn't meet the $25,000 threshold, you're fine. Now, let's say you get $26,000. Well, that's fine because according to the Charleston principles, it's a look-back provision, which means that after you determine that you will hit that $26,000 or $25,000 threshold, then you can file in that state. But I will warn you that there is, to my knowledge, at least one that I know of, one state, Colorado, that does not participate in the Charleston principles, and I think the other one might be Massachusetts. So if you are a state that is bordering either Colorado or Massachusetts, it might be to your benefit to, before the giving day, to file that license in those states.
So just a reminder for our members on the call with the council, you always have access to Brian, and you can get all the details as well. When you go to COF.org, the Council on Foundations website, you can literally just type in the search bar, state charitable solicitation, and it will right away come up with the compliance rules and regulations, and it gives some outlines for how you address those within your state, as well as the multi-state filer project that the council certainly was progressively involved in getting that regulation going forward. So with that, I am being cued that it is time to wrap up. You had many good questions. We are going to catalog all of these questions. We're going to come up with a way in which to best get those answered. I'll be working with our panelists and our co-presenters over at the Knight Foundation to do our best to get you a complete entry of those, probably through a blog entry. And lots of great questions around the prize pools, around the administrative fees, and the various components of engaging nonprofits. I want to thank all of our panelists. It was very generous of them to give their time, share a little bit about their experiences, as well as some of the vulnerabilities that came with their experiences. So Sarah with Silicon Valley, Sarah Davison, thank you so much. Kelly Uranker with the Pittsburgh Foundation, thanks for helping us understand how you moved beyond your giving days. I want to also thank Lori Preston at the Bluegrass Community Foundation, Janelle Kaplan at the Miami Foundation. Thanks for giving us a sense of how you continue to make the most of your Giving Days experience. And to the Knight Foundation, they have certainly done a lot of great things for the Community Foundation field, and this certainly is one of those that I credit it to. So thank you, Michelle, for your time today on the call. With that, everyone, just a reminder, we will be posting this recording online within the couple weeks, and we greatly appreciate you taking time to join us here at the Council on Foundations. Thank you.